So, hello from Amsterdam, a warm welcome to our first press briefing in 2024. My name is Monika Benstetter. I'm the head of communication at the European Medicines Agency. Today's press briefing is about the medicines we've recommended for approval last year. We will take you through the trends and figures that we have observed in 2024, and we will also present important new treatments, those medicines that address unmet medical needs and that have the potential to make a real difference to patient care. We also want to take a closer look at neurology and psychiatry. This is a therapeutic area where we see lots of exciting developments. To do so, I'm joined here by two fantastic colleagues. Here with me are Stefan Tierstrup, EMA's Chief Medical Officer, and Pavel Balabanov. He's the head of neurology and psychiatry. Stefan will start off with an overview of the medicines recommended for approval across all therapeutic areas, and Pavel will then focus his presentation on the trends and achievements in the development of treatments of medicines that affect the brain or central nervous system. After that, we will open the floor for your questions. Now, just a few technical points before we start. Your microphones are muted by default, but of course we will give you the floor when you ask questions. This briefing is broadcast live, and we will be making a recording available after the meeting. And also after the briefing, we are going to publish an overview of the human medicines that we assessed in 2024. We have sent the document to those of you who have registered for this briefing already under embargo. Our overview has information across about the assessment of medicines across the whole life cycle. That includes also safety. However, in this press briefing, we will be focusing on the new medicines. Overall, we have about 30 minutes for this press briefing. And now, without any further ado, over to Stefan, who will start off. Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks, Monica, and good afternoon to everyone here, and thanks for joining. It's a pleasure for me to speak to you today. So, as already said by Monica, this briefing will focus on medicines that the agency recommended for approval last year, and I'll highlight a few trends that we have been observing among these medicines. Let me start just to focus on the numbers of new medicines for last year. Last year, our Committee for Human Medicines recommended no less than 114 medicines for approval. This is actually the highest number in the last 15 years and among the highest number of new medicines recommended over the past 30 years that this agency have existed. So these figures definitely stand out. And it is at least a signal that some of the negative impact of COVID-19 that may have created a downturn of number of clinical trials and activities in the pharmaceutical industry have now gained momentum. Of these 114 new medicines, 40% or 46 new drugs contain what we call a new active substance. The active substance of a medicine is, as the name says, the active ingredient that actually exerts the clinical desired effect and the potential side effects as well. But being a new active substance also means that this substance has never been approved in EU before. 15 of the products that we approved, and that 13%, had an orphan designation at the time of approval. So this means that these products are targeting rare conditions, more precisely conditions that are less frequent than 5 in 10,000 citizens of the European Union. Turning a little bit to the therapeutic area, as in previous years, cancer continues to be the area with most approvals. 1/4, or 28 out of the 114 products, were actually for oncology products. Following cancer, we have immunology and rheumatology, where 13 medicines were recommended for approval. And for therapeutic areas of blood coagulation and blood, as well as endocrinology, we saw 12 and 9 new approvals last year. I cannot obviously not highlight all the new medicines, but in the following, I'll highlight a few that stands out either because they represent innovation or in the way they address high unmet medical need. Among them is Valirec. That's a treatment for tumors associated with the very rare von Hippel-Lindau's disease, and also to treat advanced clear cell renal cell carcinoma. It's the first medicines available or approved for these very rare disorders. Another example of innovation is Unefi. It's not a new active substance, it's adrenaline for treatment, emergency treatment against severe allergic reactions. But here's a major contribution to patients because this product is a nasal spray, and compared to the traditional auto-injector, this is first of all much more handy. It can be handled by non-medic, doesn't require the same level of instructions, and it's also more easy to carry with you in your bag or wherever you want to do it. So this actually is a big improvement for patients who are prone to severe allergic reactions. Now turning to a big topic for last year and for the previous years for that matter, infectious diseases. We have actually recommended for approval 2 new antibiotics. One is Emblaveo, which is a combination of 2 substances, Aztreonam and Avibactam, and Exblifip, which is a combination of Cefepime and Enmetazobactam. Both of them are for treatments of severe infections, including hospital-acquired pneumonia, intra-abdominal and urinary tract infections. Last year was also a busy year, again, I need to say, for approvals of vaccines. I will highlight a few. We approved IXCHIQ, which is the first vaccine in EU to prevent chikungunya disease. Chikungunya virus is an endemic virus in many tropical and subtropical countries and causes recurrent endemic outbursts and outbreaks. It is transmitted by mosquitoes, and due to climate changes, it may also spread to other regions of the world, including European countries. The vaccine as such is authorized by EMA for the use in the European Union, but recognizing the global health challenge of chikungunya in general, this vaccine was assessed under the EMA Open Initiative that allows us to collaborate with other regulators globally outside EU and share our scientific expertise, and by such promoting global public health. Staying on with the infections, as you all know, this time of the year our national healthcare systems are facing significant challenges due to the annual peak in respiratory infections. This year is not different. Flu is peaking in the winter seasons, and other acute respiratory diseases such as RSV, the respiratory syncytial virus, and also COVID infections are peaking. Last year, we made positive recommendations for Mresvir, another mRNA vaccine, this time targeting RSV virus and intended to protect the elderly population, those over 60 years of age, against this infection. Although I think most of us consider the COVID-19 pandemic as something of the past, the virus is still around, it's still circulating, and it's still mutating, giving rise to new infections and hospitalizations. We are therefore still active in the field of ensuring that active immunization vaccines is available to protect our citizens. Among the vaccines approved last year was a new mRNA platform, a so-called self-amplifying mRNA vaccine, which will be available when it's been updated to the current circulating strain. The vaccine is called Kostaive, and it can be quickly adapted to the latest circulating variants. Talking about adapting vaccines, we also approved 4 adapted versions of the already existing vaccines targeting COVID-19 variants, so they can be rolled out in this season to protect vulnerable population. Continuing in the area of infectious diseases, as you are aware, the spread of Mpox remains a public health emergency of international concern. Last year, EMA played an important role in the global response to Mpox by extending the indication of the vaccine Imvanex to include adolescents from 12 years of age to 17 years of age. And we also issued a recommendation to use the vaccine to prevent mpox in children below 12 years of age in areas where there is a declared public health emergency. Finally, on the infection side, turning to the risk of avian flu or bird flu. Together with the World Health Organization and the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, we are constantly monitoring the global situation with regard to the risk of outbreak of zoonotic influenza outbreaks, including bird flu, caused by the H5 strain of the influenza A virus. This is important because the virus is constantly mutating, and although human transmission of the H5N1 virus is rare, those cases seen so far have had a high case mortality rate. I believe we are well prepared against this possible bird flu pandemic because we have several vaccines already approved that can give and provide a general coverage against avian flu, and we also have vaccines that can be adapted in an emergency and pandemic situation to meet the specific strain of a potential pandemic. All these vaccines can be used in adults and children below the age of 6 months. Let's zoom out of the vaccines. I would like to highlight also that actually a quarter, so 28 products of the medicine we approved last year were biosimilars. This brings the total number of biosimilars approved in Europe and available to be marketed up to 104. Last year's biosimilar approval account for most of the medicines approved in the area of immunology, rheumatology, where biosimilars were recommended to be used against autoimmune diseases like plaque psoriasis, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease. Other diseases for which CHMP recommended biosimilars include cancer, osteoporosis, and the eye condition macular degeneration. This is also reflected in the most approved active substances, those being ustekinumab, denosumab, and aflibercept. The high number of approved biosimilars and the wide range of therapeutic areas covered by biosimilars is good news for patients and good news for healthcare systems and their budgets across Europe. Biosimilars can make treatment more accessible, more affordable, and provide a better access or broader access to this potentially life-changing medicines for patients. So, while I've given a rundown of the overall developments and focused on a few noteworthy topics, we would now like to put, as stated by Monica, a little bit emphasis on neurological disorders and the therapeutic area of neurology and psychiatry. I'll pass the floor to my good colleague, Pavel Balabanov. Please, Pavel.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Let's start by diving into the hot topics and the developments in my area of expertise, which, as mentioned, are the brain disorders, including psychiatry, neurology and psychiatry. And a lot has happened in 24 that is worth mentioning. If you look at the numbers are striking. If we take, for example, the number of people living with dementia today, we know that there are about 8 million in the European Union, with about half of that representing the patients with Alzheimer's disease. These diseases are, as we know, with a very significant social, personal, and economic impact. And even if we're talking about rare diseases, like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, we're talking about numbers in the range of 50,000 to 60,000 living with this condition in Europe today. For psychiatric disorders, the numbers are also significant. We are estimating about 1.2 million people living with psychiatric disorders in Europe. It is well-known fact that developing new therapies in this disease area represents a lot of challenges. And it is due to the fact that such diseases are often with complex pathology. They're very heterogeneous, both in patient and in clinical symptoms. They have the challenge of having to cross the blood-brain barrier when we're talking about new treatments, and also designing clinical trials in this area is traditionally very challenging. This and other factors have led to a very high failure rate, which means that traditionally in this disease area we're used to conditions with a great socioeconomic impact and very few available treatments. Also, diseases of the brain are often characterized by pathogenesis, which represents several pathogenic mechanisms. That means that it is unlikely to expect a certain medicine to be able to address all of them at once, and we're more likely looking at a scenario where treatments will have to incorporate different drugs addressing these different pathogenic mechanisms. On the background of this, it is very reassuring to see that there are positive signals coming out of research, and as regulators we are at the forefront of these signals, hoping that some of these will be providing quickly answers in the future to some of the most pertinent questions in this area. As regulators, we are trying to use all available tools in our arsenal to stimulate and support innovation, and in that way accelerate the availability of therapeutic opportunities these diseases in the European Union. Let me try to give you a couple of examples of what has happened in 2024 and what we have achieved. In the past years, we have seen approval of Alzheimer drugs in several regions in the world. And in 2024, the European Medicines Agency issued its first positive opinion in this area, authorizing lecanemab for the treatment of a subset of patients with Alzheimer's disease. If you're focusing on the rare disease in neurology, we also have a very good positive news with the first positive opinion for Tofersen, also happening in 2024 for a subset of patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a relentless, constantly progressive disease of the muscle, leading ultimately to death. So it is very reassuring to see that the first options are being now made available to European patients. Apart from approvals, though, we also have other tools for stimulating innovation and supporting developments in this area. In 2024, we published the Horizon Scanning on Alzheimer's disease, which represents a regulatory look, a regulatory perspective into the challenges, but also the opportunities for developers in this field, where jointly with regulators and key opinion leaders, we try to address the pertinent questions that need answering in Alzheimer's disease. There were a lot of exciting news in the last years due to the change in legislation about the potential use of psychedelics in the field of psychiatry, and the agency reacted to that by organizing a multi-stakeholder workshop in 2024 with the goal of trying to identify the challenges and again the opportunities of bringing the developments of these specific class of potential treatments to European patients. The European Medicines Agency welcomed not only regulators from around the world, but patients, scientists, key opinion leaders to jointly try to find solutions for the most pertinent problems in the field of psychedelic research and translating research into innovative medicines for the European patient. What we have learned is that in order to fulfill our goal of bringing safe and effective medicines to patients, the European Medicines Agency and regulators will have to always be prepared and ready to address innovation with everything that we have in our arsenal. So in the future, we envisage to be even more collaborative with academia, industry, patients, and regulatory bodies to adapt our tools and present a viable regulatory network that actually reflects the need of this particular field in the field of brain diseases and psychiatry. So in the end, we're not looking at a black hole where nothing seems to be working. And instead, we have seen some positive signals with hope for the future and light in the end of the tunnel. I would like to stop here and maybe give you opportunity for questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much both to Pavel and Stefan for really interesting insights and a great and comprehensive overview. Now, the floor is now open for your questions. To ask a question, you just simply need to raise your hand and then we give you the floor. I can't see one at the moment, so maybe think a little bit, but I know we have had a really great summary of our two speakers. I see a question now, and I would like to give the floor to Ludwig Berger from Reuters. Ludwig, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And apologies if it's not a question directly to the keynote address you had. Allow me to ask something about the big issue of obesity drugs. And there's a huge interest and huge development activity in the related field of muscle and body composition and lean mass, and with all that, I wonder what EMA's position is, whether there are addressable diseases here. So clearly, we will have people on very highly effective obesity drugs that are losing weight, and there are some in the industry saying that this may or may not produce a sarcopenia, so a loss of muscle tissue, maybe related to old age. Maybe you can tell us about your thinking. Is that a problem that needs to be addressed with the pharmaceutical therapy? And if so, how would that disease be defined? How would you? What is EMA's threshold or definition of drugs that are provable to treat maybe muscle loss or a reversal of muscle loss in the context of obesity treatment?
Yeah, thanks, Ulrich. Indeed, it's a big question and probably goes a little bit beyond what we are doing here, but nevertheless, Stefan, I think, can say a few words about this. Stefan, please.
Yeah, many thanks, Ulrich, and it was a very complicated, and it could end up being, a full day conference addressing your issues. You're right in saying that many of the obesity products, and mainly the GLP-1 analogs we've seen, you see a gradual increase of further and further therapeutic applications, and also either they come as an indication extension by us, or the data gets accessible by the prescriber because we include the data from new studies in the product information. I think first of all, talking about obesity is linked to a lot of associated conditions, and many of the obesity drugs, by just treating the obesity independent on the mode of action, so even just going on a slimming diet, would reduce the risk of those conditions. So it's also a balance for us when the condition is closely linked to obesity, whether this is eligible for a new indication that can be used to promote and market the product further, or whether those data should just in inverted commas, be put available for the prescribers so they know the scientific evidence for this. So that's a discussion in the CHMP when we see new applications. For the sarcopenia, it's a little bit a more complicated question, because you have sarcopenia as part of obesity, but you also see sarcopenia as part of cancer, cachexia, and in the HIV days, when we were not able to treat HIV, we saw HIV-related cachexia. I would not exclude that some of the obesity products could have an action here, but we need to have, first of all, a clear identified disease entity, and how do we define cachexia and muscle wasting. And then we need to, the company need to demonstrate an effect on desirable endpoints. And there will be a need, I would say, in cachexia, because it's been a complicated area, to come to us for scientific advice and discuss as a developer how you potentially could move an anti-obesity product forward in that area. So this was a very high level response to a very complicated but definitely also very hot topic. I hope it's satisfying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for tackling this. May I please also remind people, when you ask a question, it would be great if you could switch on your video camera. I see we have a question now from Natalie Morrison from APM. Natalie, it would be great if you could switch on your video camera, and we give you the floor now.
Hello, Monica. I am awfully sorry. I am on my old computer, which does not have video camera. I'm really sorry. I can't switch it on. Had a bit of a technical fault this week. So anyway, thank you very much for taking my question. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to ask, this week at JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, Peter Marks spoke as part of an ARM briefing there for Alliance for Regenerative Medicines. And he was talking about the idea of better regulatory harmonization between regulatory bodies, so including the EMA, including the FDA, and how discussions have been very early for this, but they have been ongoing. And it really feels like the FDA is quite keen to instigate that, to reduce the burden of regulation when it comes to getting rare disease treatments to market. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the European Medicines Agency's view on this. Is this something that you're as keen to do as the FDA is? And what can we expect to see in coming years?
Thanks, Natalie. Now that's again a question for Stefan, who can take you through some of the activities we're already doing and maybe also give a bit of an outlook.
Yeah, Natalie, many thanks for that question. We obviously aware of FDA's activities here. And I think before going into the details of rare disease, I think it's important for me to stress that FDA is our closest collaborator, and we meet with FDA virtually, I would say, on a daily basis in one or another area of the agency to discuss things, in particular in oncology. And therefore, we also meet and discuss with the FDA when it comes to rare diseases and rare genetic disorders that potentially could be treated with gene and cell therapies. So we are very much aware of Peter Marks's initiative, and I know colleagues in this agency working with gene therapy is already engaging with the initiative that the FDA has on track there. So that's one thing we are definitely engaging, and we are open to discuss how we can move such a work further forward. I will also have to tell you that last autumn there was a meeting under the umbrella of ICMA, the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, where FDA, PMDA, European Medicines Agency, Saudi FDA, China, and a lot of other agencies met together with patients' organizations in Lugano to discuss in particular the rare diseases. And what we discussed was there's no legal or regulatory definition for ultra-rare diseases, but diseases that are so rare that the potential to do clinical trials, or at least the potential to do more than one clinical trial, is very limited due to the number of patients available. So there is definitely an area to join forces also with patient organizations and developers to make sure that the potential products to treat these very, very rare diseases are moved forward in a careful manner, so we don't waste patients, sorry for that expression, so we can optimize the development. So there are a lot of things happening in the area of rare diseases at the moment. So that gives you an idea of our eagerness to collaborate with the FDA also in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Okay, do we have any further questions here? Yeah, we have one from Nina Kunze, and I think Nina is from the SWR. Nina, please, the floor is yours. If you can switch on your camera, would be great.
Okay, now my audio's on. Thank you. I hope you can hear me well. So thank you for the sort of looking back. And I was wondering, are there any hot candidates for drugs to be recommended next year or like in 2025?
Again, maybe let's start with Stefan, and perhaps Pavel can jump in if there's anything.
You know, it's difficult to predict, and especially about the future. So having said that, I would hope and I would assume that there are good candidates for next year. The pipeline looks promising, but I cannot disclose, and that would be breach of confidentiality, first of all, what products are under review or will become under review. Those are under review, you can see on our website, but those who potentially become under review, I cannot disclose. And of course, I cannot make any predictions whether they will be game changers or such, but I definitely hope so on behalf of patients.
Thank you. I can just add that I think that what we expect to see and what is reaching the regulatory stage now reflects the progress in science that we've seen, and I'm speaking about the field of neurodegenerative diseases and neurology and psychiatry in general. So whether there will be some huge blockbuster news next year, we cannot say, as mentioned by my colleague, but we definitely see the research, late-stage research, and breakthroughs in a number of areas that will have to pass through the regulatory system. And as I said, our role is to make this system fully and up-to-date and available to provide the flexibility and the specifics that they need in order to make sure that anything that is worth delivering to the European patient passes quickly through the system. But if you follow the research in the area, this is probably what is going to give you the best answer of what we're expecting to see in the year and the years to come in general. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavel and Stefan. Now, I know we have 2 questions from Helen Collis from Politico, who I think cannot raise her hand, so cannot take the floor. So I will pass them on to most likely Stefan. Helen's first question is on obesity, and she asked whether there are any signals that patients taking GLP-1 receptor agonists are not receiving enough nutrients. So generally, Stefan, maybe you could tell us a little bit what EMA is doing in terms of the safety monitoring and monitoring of any health risks.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. That's actually a quite good question, because as you know, being on GLP-1s or other anti-obesity products most likely make you eat less. That's the idea, of course, and therefore there potentially could be an impact on nutrition unless you take vitamin supplements, which I think is the general recommendation. I'm not aware of any active signal by our safety committee on this, but it's definitely something that, again, out of the mechanism of actions of these products and how they are used, that potentially could be seen. So I would be surprised if we are not looking out for this in our regulatory safety review of these products. But to my knowledge, we don't have any signal on this at the moment. I know you have a second question as well. So, Monica?
Yeah, thanks. Indeed, Helen had a second question that relates to the new HTA regulation that went into operation on the 12th of January. And here, Helen's question is whether EMA can tell which companies and their medicines will be the first to undergo EU HTA. Stefan will take this, of course, on the understanding that this is a process that EMA does not run itself.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. You're right that companies who are obliged to submit under the new HTA regulation, and that will either be an oncology product or an advanced medicine therapy product, will have to notify us in parallel with the health technology coordination group that takes care of this. I can, for good reasons. First of all, I'm not sure whether we at all have received the first application here. It is something that came into force on Sunday this week, as you know. And secondly, I don't think I will be in a position to disclose what will come, but I'm pretty sure as soon as we've seen the first application and review has started, it will be on our website as every other product that is undergoing regulatory review. So sorry, I cannot disclose anything here. And I also think it's important to remember that normally the review by the European Medicines Agency is something that runs up in around a year. So your next question might have been, when can we expect to see the first product that will have both an EMA opinion and an HTA opinion? And to that, my answer would be most likely next year. So this is a story to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. For now, I cannot see any further hands. So I'll take it that we have responded to the questions. We have provided a comprehensive overview. I want to thank everybody for your excellent questions this afternoon and for attending our press briefing. I also want to thank, of course, our speakers for a really great and insightful overview. As always, if you do have any further questions, please feel free to contact the EMA press office at press@ema.europa.eu. Thanks again, goodbye, and apologies again for the little glitch at the beginning, but really thank you so much for bearing with us, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Thank you.